Now, what we're going to do with this is a rather, well, I was going to say it's rather sad. It's not in bad nick, but it's a cactus in a pot on a windowsill. And I thought there was taking a leaf out of Monica's book. She's 7, and she does the most fabulous pictures, and she kind of throws reality out of the window. And she takes a subject and she runs with it. And we're going to take this picture of a cactus and we're going to run with this. We're going to take it out of that pot and we're going to maybe put it in a landscape, and just see where we can go with it. Okay. So I thought, what's nice to think, what's nice to notice about this is the way that each one of these, now what do you call cactus bits? Leaves, stems, stalks, buds, arms. Anyway, they overlap each other, which creates a nice sense of depth. And we've got this kind of fella in the front, and then he's behind that, he's behind that, he's behind that, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to draw the base of my cactus about there, because as I said, we're going to transplant this into some kind of landscape scenario. And I'm just going to start with the front bud and just put him in like that. And I'm a bit rusty because I haven't had a warm up today. But I'm just going to start to create this series of shapes which are standing and sitting in front and behind each other. So this guy here, he's the front. These are the front. This one, the one behind, the first one behind is kind of here. So I'm just going to try and relax into this and draw a nice smooth shape like that. This one here is the next one falling behind. And of course, you don't have to be too exact with these. Nobody's going to mind if your cactus isn't accurate. Next one behind is this one. Who's just popping over the top. And can you see, as soon as you start to overlap elements in a drawing, it creates that sensation of depth. Next one along is this guy over here who's kind of standing on his own. Slightly bigger. But they do have all distinctive sausage shapes. Little fella at the back, just peeping around the corner. Let's get him in. And then finally, which makes this a really pleasing composition, is this tall one at the back that bursts out of here. Leans over at a rather pleasing angle. And then comes down again like that. And that's pretty much it. That's all we need to get cracking. So at this point, I'm going to put my pencil down and I'm going to grab a paintbrush. Now, you see these cactus buds or whatever, they are cylinders. They've got form, they're round. They're not just flat fingers. They're tubular. So we want to try and explain that with the paint. And we explain it by describing the lines that are coming down them. You see they kind of burst down, they come down like segments of an orange, really. They're big stretched oranges. So let's start off. Grab your paint. And I'm going to mix up a little puddle of very pale green. If you don't have a pale green, use a green with lots of yellow in it. And I'm keeping it quite dry because I'm going to put some pencil work over the top of this. So start off with your pale colour. Oh, another thing as well, we've got to notice where the light's coming from. And it's coming from the right here. So the right side of these cacti are brighter than the left side. That's quite important. So we're going to start off with the light value. Let me Have a piece of kitchen roll. Never go anywhere without the kitchen roll when you're watercolouring. And as I say, I'm not going to flood this with water. I'm going to keep this quite dry. And I'm going to start to describe these ribs. Can you see they've got ribs coming down? I'm going to describe these with a thin line. And the thin line starts thin at the top and then it kind of spreads out as it comes down. Let me show you. So I'm going to start quite thin. And then as I come down, I'm just going to press that down. Can you see how it starts thin at the top, gets fatter as it reaches the bottom? And I'm going to put in a few of those lines with this pale green. And these are describing the shape of this cactus. And can you see, because they get fatter at the center, thinner at the top, it's almost like they're disappearing over the top. Let's try it with this fella down here, just a little one, just thin at the top and fatter as he comes down like that. And I'm going to do them all like that. Thin at the top with a bit of a corner on it because it shoots over the top of these cactuses. And down like that. And these are almost like, these are contour lines, aren't they? They're lines that describe the contour of the shape of this cactus. And we're doing them all the way around. I know I said we're going to keep the light side on the right, but I'm drawing these contour lines all the way around because when these are dry, I'm going to glaze over the top of these. And glazing over the top of a watercolour with another watercolour, you can always see what's going on underneath. But it creates interest. You know, it gets the variety. It gives you a variety of value, which is the lightness and the darkness. It gives you a variety of colour. Because when you glaze over one colour with another colour, you end up with a third colour. So glazing's a really important technique to get your head around in watercolour. So come down, start thin at the top, and then get fatter as you come down, and it gives your cactus a bit of volume. And already that's starting to look cactusy. Okay. Now, of course, the thing with glazing is you can only glaze over the top of your first colour if the first colour's dry. Now, I'm rushing this a little bit because I've only got a certain amount of time. So I'm going to quickly dry this off with my, I've got a little blowtorch here. If you want to dry your watercolours off, it's a good idea to dry them off with a hairdryer if you're in a hurry. If you're not in a hurry, just wait a couple of minutes and just let your first layer dry off. Because if you put a second layer on and it's still wet, it's all going to run together, and you're not going to be able to retain the sharp, crisp edges of your first coat. So anyway, that's just dried that off. Now, my second glaze, I'm going to stick with that. I'm just going to add some green to it. Just going to add a little bit of darker green. So I'm making a slightly darker green. Can you see? I'm in the same puddle, but I've just added a bit of darker green to it. If you're working with a very limited palette, you can always just add a bit of blue to that, and that'll turn it a darker green. So now, with my second color, I'm going to go over the top with the second green, like this. I'm going to start there. It's maybe a little bit weak, that. Let's give it a bit more cloud. Let's try that again. That's better. And I'm just going to put down a few more lines. So now I've got the first color green there. I've got the white of the paper, I've got the first pale green, and now I've got another green. So I'm starting to build up a nice variety of green lines, which is describing the shape of this cactus.
Martin, are you going over the top of the pale one that you've done, or in between, or to one side? I can't quite see where you're putting that.
I'm going blindly over the top. I'm not being too, I'm not being too careful, Hilary.
Okay, just anywhere.
I am going over the top because this green on top of the first green makes a subtle third green.
Okay.
So what in fact I've got the white of the paper.
Yeah.
I've got the very yellowy first green. Then I've got places where the second green's gone over the first green to make a third green.
Okay.
And then I've got places where the second green hasn't gone over the first green, but has just gone over the top, which gives me the white, which gives me, it's just generating loads of different types of green.
Right, so it's a little bit random.
Yes, yeah, okay. It is. Right. You could be careful.
Could you lift it up so we could see?
Yeah, sure. Good idea. There. So, I have got, if I can explain, I've got the white of the paper there. I've got the first green there. I've got green going onto the white of the paper there, but I've also got green going over the first green there. So it's generating, I'm making a meal of this. I'm making this sound far more complicated than it is. I'm just layering color on top of color. And sometimes it's on top of the previous color and sometimes it's on top of the white paper. But it's just, each time I'm trying to follow the contours of the cactus, but I'm just trying to build up the illusion of lots of greens. And then, and what I'm not doing here is taking much notice of the light and the shade, but I'm going to address that with the next green. I'm going to put another green on in a minute, which is going to be much darker, and I'm going to keep that on the dark side. So, yeah, just randomly following the contour lines. And just really building up variety. But yeah, no, that was a good question, actually, Hilary. I'm not being too careful. It's getting a bit better as I'm getting more confident. Look, that last one was much, much better than the first one. But can you see, I've got white of the paper, I've got first green, I've got second green, and I've also got, it's probably difficult to see and spot, but there is a third green where the second green's gone over the first green, as opposed to going on to the white paper. I think it's more difficult to explain than it is to do. But hopefully you get the picture. So now we've built up these shapes, you know, they've got form, haven't they? Because of these lines that I've put on, the thin at the top, they've got fatter because they're bulging out in the middle. And they've got really nice form. So I'm going to go back into this color here, and I'm going to do yet another green, but I'm going to make this a really kind of dark, punchy green. Look at that. So I could just use a stronger version of what I've done there, or I could maybe add a little bit of blue, and that blue is going to take it down even darker. I don't want to take it too dark, but can you see that's given that a really nice, strong green there. How about the top, I think? Look at that bit of blue in there, and suddenly that's took it way down. Now this third and final green, I'm only going to put it on the right side, because this is a green you don't see where the light's hitting it. This is a green where it's more shady. So let's just see what we can do with this. So I'm going to start about halfway around, and again, it's not too green, but it's green enough to have a bit of, to give the illusion of shade. I'm still going thin at the top. Now, can you see that's starting to give that a bit of shadow around there, which is nice. Just maybe put a little bit down here with this fella. And this top, the big one at the back, I'm going to start halfway round. I don't want to put any dark green on the light side, if you know what I mean. And again, I'm not trying to avoid any lines. Look, that I'm going to make it dark in there. That's good. Can you see how it gets really dark down there? And then I'm moving around to the right. I'm building up the shadow like this. And then put a bit around there. See, and it's starting to make it a little bit darker on this side. You can sense the light coming from this side now. I'm using a little bit of artistic license. This is not a botanical study. This is just playing with it, really. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing what Monica does with this. Come on, Monica. You're going to put us all to shame. I'm sure you'll come up with something fabulous. So again, dark side on the right side. I've got a few little blobs and blitches in here. It's a bit scrappy, but it's all right because I'm enjoying it. I'm painting with quite a dry brush today, which is most unlike me, but it's nice. You know, you should always utilize the full capacity of your brush. It's not just for throwing paint down. You can do some very careful stuff. And of course, if you really want to intensify this dark side, you can go over again. And in glazing, you know, if you do a second glaze over the top of a first glaze, it makes it darker, which is very useful. I'm running out of paint here. Let's get a bit more going. So I've just built this up with lots of lines. Lots of lines of green. And it makes a really nice effect. You see? started. So what I can see the white of the paper. I can see that very pale green there. I can see our second green, and I've got our third green. And where they're overlapping each other, you get a lovely kind of variety. Look at that. That works really well there. You've got that variety of greens showing through greens. And it just makes it exciting, doesn't it? Interesting. Okay, maybe exciting's a little bit over-exaggerating, but we've not just flattened it. We've got form. It's looking really three-dimensional. And you know, that's about it for the cactus. Now, again, I want this to be dry because I want to put some of these little needles on. And I'm going to do that with a pencil. You could do it with a brush, but I'm going to go in with a pencil. And I'm going to make sure my pencil's sharp. So I've got a bit of paper and I'm just going to get a nice point on my pencil. I've got a knife here because it was lying around, but you can use a pencil sharpener. And just shave away until you get a nice point on your pencil. Okay. And now I'm going to come round and I'm going to put these little widgets on, the little spikes. Let's start off here. Now, it's not very clear, but there are these are little starbursts of spikes. So I'm just going to quickly do with some quick pencil mark, 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to do little bunches of 3, I think. There, look at that. That really brings it to life. I'm going to carry on and just go around the outsides to start off with, because like a glaze, you can really only work over the top of your watercolor if it's dry with pencil.
That's an ordinary pencil, not a watercolor pencil.
Correct. This is just an ordinary pencil. Yeah, because I don't want them to be too black. You see on here, they're not even black at all. So I'm taking a bit of liberty by using this. You know, we're bending the truth a little bit because the needles on here are cream, white, but you can't really do a paler color over the top of an existing watercolor unless you want to use a gel pen or something. And there's no point in using a gel pen on white paper, a white gel pen. So yeah, we're just using artistic license. We're bending the truth. So now this is dry. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to come down these ribs. You know, there are 1, 2, 3 ribs of needles coming down here. So I'm just going to come down like this, 1, 2, 3 little starbursts of spikes, like that. And you know, with drawing, you can make things up. It's absolutely fine, as Monica will testify. It's not a camera. We're not cameras. We're not recording exactly what's there. We can take our subject on a journey, which is what we're doing with this cactus. We're liberating it from its pot. And we are, you know, these little spikes, they're there, but we're just making them a different color. We're going off-piste. It's one thing to draw what you see, but it's also perfectly acceptable to do what you like. Because of course, art is the marriage. You know, watercolor is a craft which you learn. Anybody can learn it. It's not a talent, it's a craft. Anybody can learn it. But art is the marriage of that craft with an idea. You know, it's just a craft until you do something with it. So as soon as you start to utilize your skills that you've learned and put an idea behind it, then that's when you're making art. And that's when it starts to become truly satisfying. Okay, now I've just been sitting here rambling and I've gone over the whole of my cactus with these little needles. I probably needn't have done, but I have. Maybe just put a couple down here. Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah, nice. Okay, so I'm going to call that cactus finished. Let's put him in some kind of context. We're going to take him, we're going to liberate him from the pot. First job is to give him a nice shadow. So the light's coming from over here. Let's just put a shadow down there. So shadow. When you're in the sunshine and the sunshine casts a shadow, the shadow is generally being lit by the sky. It's not lit by the sun, which is yellow. It's lit by the sky, which is blue. So that's why shadows are generally blue. So let's just make a bit of a nice blue here. They're not blue blue, they're just a cool dark. So, you know, it's not just a grey. I'm going to go for that. So my sun's coming from down here. My shadow's in there, but it's casting. That shadow's a bit green. So to neutralize that green, got a bit of red. That's a bit too much red because that's now gone purple. Well, that's not bad. Let's go with that. I don't want my shadow to be too green because my cactus is green. So I'm just going to put a shadow in there like that. And that's kind of it, because it's a late evening. The sun is low. Can you see? That's certainly given that. And I can probably, if I'm clever, just bring that shadow up into some of the darker areas of this cactus like that. Just bring him up into them. Okay. What I could do as well, I could put some kind of fake horizon in there. Could even put another little cactus on the Look at that. I've done a little Arizona landscape. Oh, nice. But as we're in the landscape, let's just put a few little stones here and there. Put a little sky in. A really pale sky. Just a hint of something. Just to kind of give it context. Now, this is where I like to throw in a bit more water to lose my edges. Get it nice and juicy. Look at that, just a little scribble like that, and suddenly your kind of imagination makes up the clouds and puts the bits in the gaps, doesn't it? I'll do. And then maybe just a hint of a ground, just the kind of surface of the little desert. So a bit of water, a bit of kind of warm yellow for a nice desert sand, and maybe just fades off into the distance. Don't really want to touch my shadow because he's still wet. If I did, it'd just go, it'd just explode. So that's maybe all I'm going to do, you know. I think I'll just leave it at that. So there we have it. We have taken our cactus, our rather sickly looking cactus off of a windowsill, and we've transported into the deserts of Arizona.
Beautiful, Martin.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you very much. But isn't it nice just to go somewhere else with something? You know, wasn't a big deal taking him out of the pot and putting him into a little spot somewhere. So I want to thank Monica for that. I want to thank Monica for giving us the inspiration to just try something different. Thank you, Monica. I'm looking forward to seeing what you did. Let me just come back and say goodbye to everybody. There we go. So, yeah, lesson today is don't be restricted by what you're looking at. Don't be just stuck with what you're a bit bored with the view out your window. Take it somewhere else, you know. Play with it, run with it. Okay, and here ends today's lesson. So enjoy yourselves for the rest of the day. Thank you all for being here, and I will see you all next week.
See you next week, everyone. Thanks, Martin. That was great.
Pleasure. See you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.